Welcome to Episode 5 of the Castle of Spirits podcast. See, that's how you do it.
That is how you do it. And welcome to our very first fully professional episode. By the 5th episode, we should be pros and know what we're doing by now.
I wouldn't go that far, and I think you're setting expectations that we cannot live up to, but it is the first episode we've recorded in the season of fall.
That's true. Yep.
And I'm excited about it because we've had a long road to fall.
You know, I wouldn't say that we're even there yet. Still supposed to be in the high 80s this week, and that is unacceptable behavior for fall. So,
well, I am sitting here with a comfy blanket wrapped around my feet because it's cold in the house.
Yeah.
It's always a good sign when there's cold spots in your house.
Cold spots.
And the castle, I'm sorry, we're in a castle.
This drafty old castle.
Yes.
So
indeed.
you were saying that there was something you wanted to talk about today. That, you know, after recording several of these episodes and talking about this website over the last few months as we've been preparing to open the castle doors, the new castle doors, that you were wondering if kind of immersing yourself in these types of things can bring experiences on.
Yes.
What?
Since you said it for me,
Yeah.
I guess I don't have to say it now.
Yeah, but why did you want to talk about that? Like, what about that?
Oh, the reasons
Edit the
behind
hell
it.
out of that.
The reasons behind that were, and it was in an Instagram post that I threw up,
Whoa.
that I posted to the interwebs, where I asked the question, is it possible that the more you talk about the paranormal, the greater the chances are that you'll begin to experience it?
Mm-hmm.
Because not 30 minutes after we'd finished editing the last episode, we walked into the room where we normally record this podcast, and one of our battery-operated candles, we have an array of them over there.
It's like a dozen of them, and yeah, little battery-operated candles. They have a remote control.
And we haven't used them for months.
You haven't touched them. The remote control is sitting up on a shelf over there. It's got a little layer of dust on it. You know, it's the castle, right? And yeah, we walk into the room and just one. And you can't like use the remote and just turn on one, because no matter how you try and point, you might not get all of them, but you're going to get several of them to turn on if you push that remote button, no matter how close you get to one of them.
Right.
So, but just one of them was turned on.
And that was, I mean, I'm not willing to go so far as to call it paranormal, but it was abnormal, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's abnormalities all over the place.
It was strange.
It was very strange. And it was not something that happens frequently here. And so it led me to ask that question. I mean, certainly you can attract negativity by thinking and talking about negative things, just as you can attract positivity into your life by thinking positive thoughts and doing positive things.
Manifestation.
Right. So exactly.
But, or is it more like I might pronounce this wrong, the Baader-Meinhof syndrome or red car syndrome? You know, when you buy a red car, suddenly all you see around you see red cars everywhere, right? So maybe it's something like that. You start thinking about the paranormal, and so your mind is more open to it. And so you start interpreting things that were already there or that would have already happened. You start interpreting them as potentially paranormal.
Yeah, but walking into a room where, like my office, the light is on, I'm like, oh, I forgot to turn the light off.
Mm-hmm.
But these candles, that's not something that happens.
It has happened one other time.
Has it? When?
It was probably a couple weeks after we got them, but it wasn't just one of the candles. About half of them were turned on. I came into the room and I was like, that's weird.
Now, if we look on on Amazon,
yeah, they'll probably be like, these things turn on all by themselves.
These things suck. 1 star.
I did try, this might be weird. Maybe you should edit this out because people might think that I'm a lunatic, but I did try to turn one of them on with my mind the other day.
Did you really?
Yeah.
All right. So what kind of drove you to do that?
Well, I was freaked out by the candle being on, and I was like, I don't know. I thought maybe I was, Carrie or something for a moment. Maybe edit that out.
You were really freaked out by that?
I was a little freaked out by it.
Still, this happened a couple of weeks ago, didn't it?
Yeah, but this was about a week ago. So.
All right. So not long after, you
Right.
were still thinking you were freaked out about it.
Yeah.
But so you tried that, and did anything happen?
Well, clearly not, because I didn't come running screaming into your office, talking about how I was a brilliant, what do they call that?
Necromancer?
Yeah,
No.
something.
No,
not a necromancer. A telekinesis person.
A telekin.
A telekin. I think that's a bird.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Yeah. A telekinoid. A telekinesis person. Yeah, that's good. That's what we'll call them. Now, you can't call it a clairvoyant because that's not clairvoyance.
No, that's totally different.
Wow. So you're not a telekinesis person.
I'm not a telekinesis person. But
I've tried stuff like that before.
Yeah?
Manifesting through concentration, and it
Did
never
it ever
worked.
work?
No, it never worked, but I've tried it.
It's a great story.
God. Well, speaking of stories.
Oh, yes. This is a story podcast, isn't it?
Yes. We live in the castle, and this castle has a humongous library.
And it's getting bigger by the day.
Of
Submit your stories, castleofspirits.com.
true ghost stories submitted by listeners.
Listeners just like you.
And we could probably go on forever reading these stories.
And we very well may.
We just might. But today, I have one picked out and you have one picked out.
I do. We need to make sure it's not the same story.
Again? Okay.
That's always.
The odds of that happening. But
yeah,
still.
but because the odds of that happening are low, it's going to happen.
All right.
My story is from April of 2003.
My story is from February of 2003.
Ooh, see, it almost happened.
Does it have the word "the" in the title?
Yes, but it's not the first word.
Okay, we're safe.
Okay. I mean, they're different months, so I think we're safe anyway.
Well, they're close, though.
Do you want to go first?
I insist. You go first.
Okay. We Were Not the Only Tenants in Our Apartment by Jill in Michigan, submitted April 2003. My boyfriend and I lived in our last apartment for 2.5 years. In that time, we had quite a few unexplainable things happen. I will only describe a few. The first thing I can remember happening was when my boyfriend and I were standing in the short hallway right outside the closed bedroom door. We both heard, at the same time, a knocking on the other side of the door, about head height. We looked at each other and I said, "I'm not going in there." My boyfriend checked out the room and there was no one there, and nothing we could see could have made that particular noise. It could not have been noise from another apartment, as it was definitely about head height. The next odd thing that happened was at about 3 a.m. We were sleeping, and we were awakened by our dog's frenzied barking and growling. Our dog sleeps on the bed with us, and he was standing at the foot of the bed, facing away from us toward the opposite wall, barking and growling and bristling. At the time, we had a small aquarium with lizards in it, and by the light of the aquarium, we could see nothing that would affect the dog like that. No insect or spider or moving shadows on the wall. We calmed Mickey as best as we could and got him to sit, but he would not lay back down and rest. The whole time I stayed awake, probably about 30 minutes after, Mickey was sitting, staring intently, hackles raised and tracking something back and forth on the wall. I did fall back asleep, and we were awakened a second time with the exact same scenario. Again, we saw nothing. That one was scary. But the scariest thing that happened to me was one morning when I had just awakened and was lying on the bed with my back to the open door of the bedroom. I heard my name, and it sounded like someone had burped it out. Jill. You know what it sounds like when someone burps out a word, right? Kind of gruff sounding. I turned over, fully expecting it to be my boyfriend, and there was no one there. I realized then that I could hear my boyfriend in the bathroom in the shower. I rushed out of the room. It's weird how you can get so freaked out you expect something else to happen. Like I almost expected the bedroom door to close before I got to it. I went into the bathroom and told my boyfriend about it and stayed with him while he finished. It freaked me out quite a bit. There was also a time when we were dog sitting for my boyfriend's mom. Queenie was a tiny, white little ragamuffin poodle dog. I was sitting in the living room and she was in the room with me. My boyfriend was in the kitchen preparing her food. He called her into the kitchen to eat and she started to go. Abruptly, she stopped and started whining at the wall in the corner of the living room. I watched her do this, all the while looking for something she could be seeing, an insect or something. She then sat back on her haunches with her front paws in the air in her beg stance, which she does when she wants a treat or something. Then she got back down on all fours, looking utterly dejected, and slunk, and I mean slunk, out of the room. All of this happened, and I saw absolutely no cause or reason for it. I mean, what or who on earth could she have been begging to, and for what? The last thing I will mention was the only thing we actually saw visually. My boyfriend and I were sitting on the couch watching a DVD. There is only one window in the living room, and it is a large sliding glass door window. It was dark outside. There's about a foot of wall between the glass door and the regular front door. Out of my peripheral, I saw something glowing on that area of wall between the doors. I turned to see what it was, and it was a reddish-orange round orb about the diameter of a coffee can. I watched as it slowly descended down the wall and disappeared into the floor. I was rendered speechless, and I turned to tell my boyfriend about it. He too had watched it as he had seen it out of his peripheral. He said, "What was that?" I had no answer for him. I do know there was no normal explanation for it. It could not have been headlights or any other light source from outside for that matter, as it was on the wall next to the window and could not have possibly lit that wall. There was no other light source in the living room except the TV. We don't live in that apartment anymore, only because we wanted a bigger place. We didn't feel threatened for the most part. I did feel a little threatened the day it said my name. The burping voice has an element of gruff to it that is kind of scary. And actually I had a lot of other little things happen there as well, like cold spots and feeling watched. Again, that was submitted by Jill in Michigan in April of 2003. Thank you so much, Jill, wherever you are. Hopefully you have no gastrointestinal ghosts haunting you almost 20 years on.
I was taken aback because I got this image of her boyfriend in the shower. He's like singing her, like calling out to her, like he wants, like, I don't know, can you bring me a towel or more soap or something? He's like, Jill! And she freaks out thinking it's a ghost and like runs out of the apartment, and he's like left going, where'd she go? Oh, man.
Vince, you really enjoyed that.
I really enjoyed that. And
I didn't expect you to get such a laugh out of it because I actually chose that story for a reason, and I figured that you would immediately know what that reason was when you heard it. But instead, you had like tears coming out of your eyes.
And, you know, I'm not laughing at the story. The story itself I thought it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. That one part where she mentioned going for the door and expecting it to slam before she got to the door.
Yeah.
Going for the doorway and expecting the door to slam before she got there. That's something that I've when you're freaked out,
yeah,
these are like these movie moments that happen in your life, and you're like, oh my God, mm-hmm. This is where somebody jumps out from the dark and like chops me up into pieces or something.
But I did choose that story for a reason.
Okay, what?
You don't know?
Well, we lived in an apartment together. In that apartment, we read a lot of scary stories to each other from Castle of Spirits.
Mm-hmm. But that apartment was not haunted.
It wasn't.
Mm-mm. But so
We did hear a lot of strange sounds coming from the neighbors, and particularly the guy downstairs who would snore and thrash around and knock things over in
he
his
had like
sleep.
night terrors, I think.
Yeah.
No, you don't remember. It was in the last house we lived in. It wasn't an old house. It was built in like 93, and we were the second family to live there. It wasn't a creepy house, but we did actually have some experiences there. And our house we live in now is much older, from the 50s. And I mean, aside from our little candle experience, I'm not prepared to say that this house is creepy or haunted or that we've really had any experiences here. But do you remember when it was shortly after we moved into the house. We had probably been living there for, I don't know, a couple months, maybe only a few weeks, not very long. And we were, oh man, you know what we were doing that night? We were reading Castle of Spirits.
Were we?
Yeah. We were sitting in the computer room. We had our little, room for computers, and it was officially the computer room.
And back then we really didn't have much furniture, so that was kind of like our living room.
Hangout spot.
Yeah, our hangout spot, the internet and all that good stuff. One computer shared.
Yep. So we were in the computer room, and we had the lights turned off because we were reading Castle of Spirits, and we had our puppy because we had just moved in. First order of business in the new house, you got to get a dog.
Right.
So we went and got our dog. And so we had her, and she was young.
Now, does this dog have a name?
Oh, yeah.
I appreciated in this last story, by the way, that she did give her dog a name.
But not the boyfriend.
Albeit not the boyfriend.
But anyway.
But yes.
Yeah, so our puppy Nova, she was a black lab. And I was the one sitting at the computer reading ghost stories. Do you remember this story? Do you remember where this is going?
I think I do.
Okay.
Because, there were a couple of occurrences in that house.
So for some reason, I didn't know where my cell phone was, and for some reason I needed it. And I asked you if you would go find it. We had a landline phone for a minute. I don't know why we thought that was necessary, but I said, I'm going to call my phone. Will you go see if you can find it? So I dial my number, and you get up and leave the room, and you close the door behind you because we didn't want our puppy to leave the room and go wander around the house and pee in corners. So as you, this is why I chose this story. So as you leave the room, you close the door and you're like making some burping noise. You were burping or you were making some kind of...
Was I singing your name?
No. But you were making some kind of burping noise as you walked off, And I wasn't really listening. I'm listening to my phone ring and ignoring your gastrointestinal distress in the hall. And after a few rings, you answered the phone and you said, wow, it was all the way down here in the basement. And our house was 3 levels and I was on the top level. So you had to go down 3 turns in the staircase to get there. And I said, what did you say? And you said, your phone was in the basement. And I said, how did you do that? And you said, do what? And I freaked. I said, get up here now. And I hung up the phone and I was freaking out. And so I hear you come pounding up all of the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. You're running up the stairs. And you come...
I was coming up because you said get up here.
Yeah, you were like, what the hell's happening?
I thought something horrible had happened.
Yeah. So you come bursting into the room and you're like, what? Well, what had happened was you left the room and you shut the door and you were making your burping noise. Whatever it was, you were like, ah, But I realized that the entire time that the phone was ringing, I could still hear on the other side of the door, this gruff sounding, like some kind of a mumbling or something. It wasn't like a burping ghost, but it was a similar sound to what you had made but it stayed right there on the other side of that door. It was like, and it was happening clear through to where you answered the phone and you were speaking.
So then, was I actually making a noise when I went down into the hallway, or was that something that you think was
you're
the same
always
sound?
making some kind of burpy noise, so I assume that you did.
That's not true.
It is true, but I assume that you were actually making that noise. But yeah, and that was the very first experience that we had in that house. So when I was reading this story and she talked about, the burping voice saying her name and being freaked out by that, I was like, I've experienced almost that exact same thing.
So what conclusion did you draw from that? I mean, did you think that, I'm certain that at some point during the conversation we were having after this occurred right there in that room, I must have posed some sort of a rational explanation, like maybe it was a truck outside or something like that.
Yeah, you probably did. Because you never believed me when...
I'm like you're the typical male...
The typical husband who's like, oh, the little lady's got the weird thoughts in her head again. Maybe she needs some more allowance money.
God.
Why don't you go shopping?
But that's the thing that happens in all those those TV shows about families, my paranormal haunting or whatever
it's always the practical husband,
the career-minded husband
doesn't believe in any of this nonsense that his little wifey believes
or
in.
his children are experiencing
right.
until he experiences it, and all of a sudden it's top priority. We have to take care of this.
Right. Or like in the show we were watching last night where he didn't believe his wife and he didn't believe his daughter, but then there was a little boy that came over to his house and he had an experience and he's like, well, and then I believed it. And I'm like, oh yeah, because another guy, even though he's a little boy, still.
Oh my God, we're
anyway.
Doomed. But
yeah, it's that trope of the guy never believes.
Until somebody taps on his pillow and wakes him up in the middle of the night, like what happened to me. And we've talked about that
but
before.
you still try to justify away the other big experience we had in that house. And I won't talk about that one right now because I don't want to give away all the goods right out of the gate. We'll save that story. I'm sure it'll come up at another time.
But that house did have its fair share of oddities, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird, like you said, that house was built in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this house was built in the 50s.
And there's nothing about it.
There really isn't. Although, we did smudge when we moved into this house. And I think that stuff really works apparently because
it's all right. Time to vacate.
The only thing that I remember or the only thing that I feel in this house is the presence of the previous family, who had teenage kids, but that was because they literally moved out and we moved in the very next day. Mm-hmm. So there were still like light fixtures and stuff that are still here to this day that they put up. Yet when I look at this house and you see it's old, I mean, it's a, what would you call it? A mid-mod? You would call this? Is not?
Yeah.
So when I look at the house, I don't sense history. I mean, there were things that happened in the world for decades and decades that were echoed in this house by the people who lived in the house and who talked about those things happening. Mm-hmm. I mean, assassinations, wars, rap. I don't know what else.
Rap.
The 80s, all that stuff. And yet I don't really feel anything. Mm-hmm.
I don't sense, like the people who have, come before, who've walked these halls or, any of that. But I do sense kind of the heaviness of the history. And I don't mean heaviness like, oh, there's this heavy oppressive feeling. I mean, I feel like history has a weight to it, right? So like our previous house was a little bit newer. It didn't have a lot of history, and most of the history that it did have was us. And, when I thought about the amount of history there, it just feels very light, very lightweight. Where here, it just feels a little bit denser and heavier because there's more years. But aside from that, I don't I don't. The only weird thing about this house is occasionally we'll come home and it will smell like an old lady's house sometimes, like, powdery, florally, perfumey, a little bit, like that stale, powdery gardenia type smell, and I absolutely hate gardenia smell, so there's nothing gardenia scented in here, but it smells like a really old grandma's house every once in a while, and just for a moment. And then every once in a while, we'll come home and it will smell like cigarettes.
Well, sometimes we'll be in here and suddenly
it smells like cigarettes.
Now,
yeah, and we don't smoke, and our neighbors don't smoke, because I even asked, thinking, well, maybe our next door neighbor over here, maybe they smoke. And so I asked, and she's like, no, we don't smoke. And she kind of seemed a little offended that I would even ask. And I said, it's just weird, because once in a while we'll smell cigarette smoke, and pretty sure the family who lived here before didn't smoke, and it didn't smell like cigarette smoke when we toured the house or when we moved in or anything.
One of the first times that we smelled that smoke, or that we smelled the smell of smoke, I think I proposed the idea that I said, well, these carpets are not exactly new.
No, but they're not. No, it's not old carpet though.
And I thought, maybe the previous tenant smoked, and maybe there was a spot or something that if there's a certain level of humidity in the air, it can activate certain dormant scents that are either in the walls or in carpet, some sort of fabric,
maybe
some sort of atmospheric things that set those things off.
But I think that these carpets were laid down within a year of us buying the house. It's not old carpet. So I don't know. But
it's freaky, but it happens.
That's the weirdest thing, is sometimes it smells like an old lady's house. Sometimes it smells like a bar.
One of the things that I remember when we first moved into the house was one of the neighbors down the street, who's been here for a long time, came over as we were moving our stuff in. And when she learned our names, she said, oh, there was a Vince that lived here before.
We didn't actually introduce ourselves in this podcast. I'm Jane. This is Vince.
Yes. Well, they know that by now.
But still.
And she said, oh, that's interesting, because there was a Vince that lived here before in this house. Back in the 80s. He had a family, but he died.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think he died in the house. But, when I heard that gave me a sense of calm. Because I thought, what are the odds that two Vinces are going to die in the same house? So I'm safe as long as we stay here.
But his name is in the concrete out front. So that's.
Is his name, or is just the kids?
Well, their last name. So now that everybody knows everything about our house, do you have a story to read?
Well, it's a castle, actually.
Oh, everything. Well.
Oh, man, I blew it. I blew the illusion.
You did. We just broke the fourth wall.
Oh, man. Anyway, I'm sorry. Just pretend everything I said. We'll just go back in post. And every time I say house, I'll overdub myself saying like castle.
Castle.
Yeah.
So there I was, sitting in the castle.
I do have a story to read.
Okay.
And what's interesting about it, and this all kind of comes together, doesn't it?
Okay.
Because we were just talking about the history of our house, castle, the history of our house. This story is called The House That Wasn't There.
Ooh.
Submitted by Anonymous in February of 2003. A few years ago, a friend and I decided on a December Saturday morning to drive from a small town in Missouri to the nearest large shopping mall. The road is a narrow 2-lane country road through mostly farmland with a few houses. We made this trip several times a year and were very familiar with the road. When we started out, it was a brisk winter day, but there was no snow or signs of snow. Once at the mall, we took in a movie, shopped, ate, shopped some more, ate some more, and shopped some more. So it was around 9 p.m. when we left and discovered a foot of snow on the ground and more coming down fast. Instead of doing the smart thing and getting a motel room, we decided to head for home. I was driving slowly because of the snowpack on the road when a car came up behind us and tried to pass on a blind curve. Of course, there was a car coming the other direction. The first car cut in too sharply and forced me off the road. Neither car stopped. So there we were, stranded on a snowbank late at night with no cell phone, and it was freezing. We sat in the car for an hour, and no other cars came by. The situation was getting desperate when Mary said, "Look, there's a house right over there." Neither of us had noticed it before. It was a very distinctive house, rustic, with a huge wraparound porch. All the lights were on, and it was very visible. We decided to see if they had a phone. The door was answered by a sweet old lady who immediately asked us in, let us call for a tow truck, and gave us a tea and cookies. We weren't sure where we were, so she gave the tow truck driver very specific directions, 2.3 miles west from the turnoff to the highway. She invited us to stay inside until the tow truck driver got there, and then she went back to bed. A few hours later, the truck showed up and we left. She was still in bed, so we just wrote a quick thank you note. Later, we decided to bake her a batch of cookies and take them back for a more personal thank you. That next Saturday, we drove back to her house. But it wasn't there. We drove by where we thought it was and couldn't find it, so we went to the turnoff by the highway. We drove exactly 2.3 miles west, and we still couldn't find it. In desperation, we called the tow truck driver, who said he had never seen a house when he picked us up. He was wondering why we'd been standing on a hill instead of waiting inside the car. Every trip to the mall since then, we've looked for that house, but have never found it. And again, that was submitted by Anonymous in February of 2003, The House That Wasn't There. Now, if you ask me why I chose that particular story.
I am asking you, why did you choose that one?
I can tell you're asking me with your eyes. Yeah. I don't know why.
Okay.
But I think that it fit very well into the flow of the conversation we were having. So maybe maybe I had some sort of a psychic intuition that I need to talk about a house.
Okay.
Or maybe it was just dumb luck.
Let's go with dumb luck.
Or at least one of those two words. But
so I think that story is interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, and I'm not saying that Anonymous in 2003 sent us what is now known as a creepypasta, but there's a similar story. I believe it's in one of the scariest stories to tell in the dark books. It's not the same. Basically, in that story, a couple, their car breaks down, yada, yada, yada. They stay at this old couple's house and, they're very hospitable and whatever. They leave them a note with some money on a table next to the door when they leave early the next day. They mention it to someone that they stayed there, but then they're told, oh, that house burned down years ago. The old couple who lived there died. They go back to the house and they find the burned rubble of the house, and they find a little end table next to the front door. And what's on the end table? Their thank you note with money in it. But
yeah, there's lots of variations to that story.
Yeah. But no, I'm not saying that I think that this story is made up, because I think that I do think that it's possible. I mean, I think that urban legends come from somewhere. There's at least a small grain of truth in all urban legends. And I think it's absolutely quite possible that they experienced what they did. And it's also possible that they just didn't go far enough, or, I don't know.
Remember when we were going to Salt Lake City and we were taking the old highway, which is now being revamped. Mm-hmm. And we missed our turn. Mm-hmm. And suddenly we were a lot farther along than we thought we were. And we thought, what happened? Did we enter some sort of a parallel universe where that exit doesn't exist? Well, it turns out that the construction changed the location of the exit.
Well, I think it's possible that these things are experienced a lot more frequently than we know, because, I mean, it's possible that you see a house all the time on the side of the road that it doesn't actually exist there. It's just, a ghost house, but you never find out about it because there's no reason to like double back. Or, you see somebody walking down the street who might be a ghost, or walking through a department store, or because you don't have opportunity to interact with them, you have no idea that you potentially just saw a ghost. I mean, who knows? There's probably been ghosts or ghost things, like, a house, or does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
Well, we take for granted that everything that we see and interact with is real until we see something or interact with something that is completely out of context. And only then is it scary, or do we think, oh, that was a ghost, or, whatever your belief is. But if it's in context to the surroundings, you have no reason to believe that it's a ghost, and no reason to question how real it is. Even if it's being weird, right? If you see a person walking down the street, like, how often have you said to me as we're driving down the street, dude, did you see that guy walking? He looked like he was straight out of the 70s. Like, you've said things like that to me before. Maybe he is. Maybe it was a ghost, but there's no opportunity to interact with him when you're just driving past him. So you think, well, that was kind of strange, but...
Oh, okay, now you're creeping me out, because now I'm thinking about occurrences like that where you see somebody. And the thing that's always freaked me out the most about ghost stories is that when spirits present themselves, and they present themselves as full-bodied apparitions, they're not flickering images, and they're not see-through. Although a lot of times you'll hear stories where people say a spirit appeared in front of them and it was transparent. I've never seen a transparent person, but I can't imagine seeing something like that on the side of the road and just thinking it's a normal person.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you see them and they're transparent, and sometimes they're not. And I think that there's differences, right? There's different types of presentation. There's different types of manifestation or occurrence or types of ghosts or whatever. But
well, maybe it's only when that manifestation causes a problem or gets noticed that then we have an opportunity to question the reality of that. It is maybe these things are going on all around us, but we only notice them when they cause a problem, when something is confusing about them, when we have to go up to them and say, "Excuse me," and then you realize that
transparent.
No, not why you're transparent, but why were you why are you not there now? I'm coming to see your house and you're no longer there. If they had just never gone back to that lady's house, it would not have been
It wouldn't have been a weird, exactly.
And maybe they would have continued to see it the next time they drove by.
Maybe, yeah. Or they would have just thought, oh, I guess that house got torn down, or, whatever. But maybe the whole transparency thing is more of a reaction, like a shock reaction. It's not that, because you're right. We talk about maybe you see these things all the time. Well, you don't go around seeing transparent houses or transparent people walking through a department store or, whatever, but you see transparent person in your house or, in places where a person shouldn't be. So maybe the transparency, seeing something as being transparent, is more of your mind's reaction to seeing something that shouldn't be there. It's or like a shock reaction. This shouldn't be there, and your brain says it was there, it wasn't there, and then it was, and I think I could see through it.
Or maybe it was transparent all along, and the only reason you're noticing it's transparent is because it's in your living room instead of passing somebody on the street. You could probably, I could probably pass by somebody in the street who was naked and not even notice.
Oh, I doubt that.
If it's a busy enough, if it's busy enough out there or something. But or certainly I could pass by somebody who is maybe a little bit transparent and might not really be there, but not really notice them because I'm not looking at them.
Maybe.
I'm not studying them. Somebody standing in your living room in the middle of the night or your bedroom, you're going to study them. You're going to look at them and say, "Oh my God, what is this?"
Yeah.
Anyway.
Interesting thoughts. We have them.
Periodically.
From time to time.
Twice a week. And once on Tuesday.
Oh boy. So I don't have any additional stories or anything. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? What are you doing on your phone?
I have subscribed to the Coast Zone, which is a coast-to-coast insider newsletter that is spirited into my email inbox periodically. And it feels like almost every other day. And it reads, Ghost Child filmed at notoriously haunted hotel in Arkansas. A spooky piece of footage circulating online appears to show a ghost child dash past the camera of a person staying at a notoriously haunted hotel in Arkansas. Posted on Reddit late last week, the eerie video was reportedly filmed at the Crescent Hotel and Spa in the city of Eureka Springs. Constructed in 1886, the building has long been said to be the home of a variety of spirits and has even been called America's most haunted hotel by many individuals. Well, that's something that can be claimed by about 1,000 hotels.
Right.
In the video, an unnamed woman films around her room and makes note of the site's haunted reputation, declaring that she and her friend, who is seen resting on a nearby bed, are looking for ghosts at the infamous site. Check out the eerie footage from their visit here.
Ooh.
You click the link, and we'll put a link to this in the show notes, of course. And it takes you to a YouTube video titled Ghost of Child Filmed at the Crescent Hotel and Spirit Face Seen Through the Static at Super 8 Hotel.
Let me see this. Let me see.
And I've never seen it, so I'm just
You haven't seen this yet?
No.
Why?
It just came into my inbox like 5 minutes ago.
So it's a time-lapse video. Okay, here we go. Here's in the room, showing it around. I love the color of the walls in this hotel room. Oh, yeah. Ew, that is creepy. Hang on, I rewound it again. Because you can see the shadow. It looks like a little girl in like a long white nightdress. It looks like maybe she's got a bow in her hair, like a white bow in her hair. She runs by real quick. They've got it in slow motion and it's still really quick. But you can see like the shadow on the wall of the little girl as she approaches. That is terrifying. Okay, here, Vince. You watch it now. All right, so this is your first time watching it, right?
And I'd like to mention also, give a shout out to the fact that it's on the Hidden Underbelly 2.0 YouTube channel.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to look at this video here. It's 3 minutes and 55 seconds. How long?
You'll be done with this part by the midway point. Just watch it.
Does it?
You'll know it when you see it.
Is it in the beginning?
You'll know it when you see it.
All right, here I go. I'm watching this video.
Give us a blow by blow.
Very nice grounds of this hotel. Looks very old and not in a bad way. Kind of looks like a southern version of the Stanley Hotel.
Yeah, I thought it kind of reminded me of the Stanley too.
What the hell was that?
Did you see it?
No, this has got to be hoax. That was terrifying.
I know.
That's like something that
it gave me chills.
I mean, and that's like something out of a good old 70s horror movie. Something darts by the camera.
I know.
Something solid and something creepy.
Yeah, you'll have to rewind it and watch it in the regular speed, because I didn't see it when it very first happened. But doesn't it look like a little girl in a white nightgown with a ribbon in her hair?
It really does. And it's so sudden.
Yeah.
That it's shocking.
Yeah.
Because, you're looking for something. I'm looking for some sort of a shadow of some sort.
Did you see the shadow on the wall?
Yeah, you do see the shadow. Oh, that's creepy. You know what? Even if that's a fake, that little kid is creepy
still
looking.
Creepy.
I love this, George Norrie. Thank you for sending it to me.
We will definitely link you to this because it is terrifying.
What I get from this video is that Super 8 Hotel is going to get a lot of business now for people looking for ghost children running through their rooms.
Mm-hmm.
So I want the ghost child room, please. And everybody's like, what? Okay. And I have to admit that video was a lot scarier than I thought. I was expecting to see something that I was going to roll my eyes at.
Yeah.
But that reaction was genuine. And I'm glad I actually didn't watch the video before we recorded because I
had no idea what to expect. But, oh man, seriously, that little girl running by gave me goosebumps on my scalp. That was seriously creepy.
Expect all such things at the castle.
That's true.
Well, of course, that wasn't from the castle.
It wasn't from the castle, but it's now
conveyed to you through the castle.
Linked through the castle. Which, speaking of linked through the castle, make sure that you check us out on Facebook and Instagram.
On the social medias.
Yeah. To stay up to date on all of the going on at the castle. It's just Castle of Spirits on both Facebook and Instagram. And make sure that you check out our new links section on our website. This is where we're going to put links to movies and books and things like that we recommend to you.
Got a lot of cool books that we can recommend for sure that I know of, and movies, of course, but
there might not be a lot in there right this moment, but it will grow and grow. And please feel free to, email us and tell us what your suggestions are. What books or movies should we check out? What TV series should we check out? Give us all of your ghostly recommendations. And you can message us through Instagram and Facebook too. So don't submit your stories through there though, please. Any stories submitted through social media or email will just be completely ignored.
Because they won't get picked up by the sexy, spooky spreadsheet that Jane has created.
Yep, the spooky spreadsheet. All the stories live in the spooky spreadsheet, and they only get into the spooky spreadsheet when you use the submit feature on the website.
You're the only person I know in the universe who gets excited about spreadsheets, whose eyes light up at spreadsheets, and who can incorporate spreadsheets and the boringness of spreadsheets into something as horrifyingly wonderful as a ghost story archive website such as castleofspirits.com.
Hey man, we all have our kinks.
That's true.
Don't yuck my yum.
And with that, we bid you a fond adieu.
Oh, please don't try and speak French.
That's not French, it's Latin. Anyway.
Oh, is it?
Until next time.
Stay scared, my friends.
Instead of doing the smart thing and getting a motel room, we decided to head for home. Instead of doing the smart thing and getting a motel room, we decided to head for home. I'll stick with one where I have a Spanish accent for some reason. I was... Motel room. I'm doing it all over.